Welcome to The Best Medicine. I'm your host, Dr. Bradley H. Werrell, and we're here to explore options and potentials to help us grow as individuals and as a community with one another in these difficult times and challenging times. We're exploring all manner of potentials related to the human experience, physical, psychological, medical, spiritual. It's a wonderful opportunity that we now experience in this critical phase of our human evolution. And I welcome you to join us in our podcast, become more aware, and identify with people who are helpful and supportive of you in your efforts as a human being on this planet and elsewhere too. We're going to be meeting people who are doing things that are widely variant from what is so-called normal within our society, in the creative space, within the social space. Our common purpose, seeking to generate positive potentials to improve the lives of everyone in our sphere of influence, and to expand that sphere of influence so that we may positively influence others that are not yet engaged directly with us. That's the goal here. We will learn more about each other as we go. I wish you the very best. Thank you very much for tuning in. Another episode of The Best Medicine. Bradley H. Werrell here, and I'm with Ian Kuzma again, who may be found at iankuzma.com.
Ian Kuzma.
Ian, I apologize.
No, it's all good.
It's like one of those hard
Every
ones
time.
to pronunciate properly. Like,
Well, no, it's my name too. I mean, it's frustrating in other settings.
I'm sure it's an interesting function. It's like I saw a funny YouTube guy was talking about names and creative hippie parent kind of people, and it's like what are you doing to that poor kid, right? And it's like that one doesn't really qualify. That's a fairly standard, unusual name, right?
Right. No, it's because it can be pronounced both ways, and my parents liked the Ian version rather than Ian, so
can't win. So what? Tell the audience what's new.
Let's see. So since last time I was talking with you, I've become a father.
Attaboy.
Now the father of a beautiful daughter, and other than that, just the whole system that I'm working in is continually not gone the direction I would hope it would be going, in that increasing knowledge and learning for everybody instead of trying to take away from it.
I understand this one. So tell me, how old is the young girl?
3 months now.
Atta girl. It's quite an experience to, raising the little ones. It's like you watch their nervous system kind of hook up.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a fascinating thing to watch because it's like this. You're like, oh, some new systems came online, and something new is happening, and it's like, whoa, that's a trip. Because you saw it happen, right? Because yesterday was, and now it's different paradigm is functioning inside that head. And it's like, wow, that's cool.
Yeah.
It's very exciting.
I think it's one of those little pieces too of like learning and being a teacher that I needed in like seeing how we piece together certain things, especially from the very beginning. It's like, oh, okay. You can't, you don't I don't truly understand my parents until I become a parent myself.
And then you become your parents.
Right.
And to your own chagrin, you're like, whoa, that came out of my dad's head.
Well, now it's okay for me to tell dad jokes, so it works out.
That's right, man. It's all right. It's like, it's a funny thing. It's like, it's quite an illuminating experience, I must say. Humbling at the same time, of course.
Yes.
It's awesome. And it's like, okay, what's that mean? You just keep on going and you do the best you can because there's no instruction manual.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
Now, like I think about these kids, right? Because it's like, okay, here's a kid can't do one thing. They pop out into the world. Hey, you're alive. Yay. And now you need stuff, and you got to ask or tell somebody that can get it, and they better get it or you die. So it's like this. I call this the innate creativity of the child, okay? Which is like the child is, if the child has to get under your skin to make you understand that something needs to happen, and you'll figure it out because there'll be a signal that's sufficient for you to get it, or she dies. And it's like, okay, so this is pretty cool to a point. At the point of which they recognize that they can satisfy their needs in such a manner as their creativity provides. Up until then they figure out they can get stuff they just want. And it's like kind of working around the edges. And now you're being worked, man. And it's like against the most creative beast in the whole planet, man, that knows you better than anybody else. Like, oh, it's like AI against you, brother. It's okay. It's okay. It's like, this is the moral guidance is, you have to be wary and provide the needs, right? What a crazy world. What a crazy world.
Yeah, it's great.
It is great. Like there's nothing better because it's like you're on your toes, you're being challenged,
Yeah, real-time challenge.
So you're interested in educational processes right now, right?
Yeah, basically I became a history teacher and then saw that so many students hated it. I was like, okay, why do they hate it? Because history is very, very interesting if you know the little nuances and the details of situations. But it's kind of, when you're younger, you don't have all of the puzzle yet. You've got little pieces and they're all over the place, and you're just like, I don't want to put this puzzle together because it's too much time and effort. And so I was like, okay, so how do we make that more fun and more interesting? And that led me on the path of learning about a whole bunch of things and going on Twitter and finding you, actually, like how that's part of this process of me
That's
being
right.
okay. If I don't know this well enough, I bet you there's 100 other people around here that are doing interesting things, and I can talk to them and find new things by doing that. And
Yeah, man. There's
it's great.
I recently started reading, and not very recently, but within the year, Peter Turchin. Are you familiar with him? Peter Turchin's out of the University of Connecticut, and he founded a field of study he calls cliodynamics.
Mm-hmm.
And he's a I believe to be, and forgive me all the people who for any errors that I must certainly make. I believe he's a evolutionary anthropologist. Okay, and it's like, I don't quite know what that means, but I'm okay. I can hang, right? I say some kind of a subspecialty of anthropology, right? But he's like the application of social sciences to history. So cliodynamics will be like quantitative history. So the last book I just read, it called War, Then Peace, or War and Peace and War. And it's about the premise is that the next empire arises at the periphery of the old empire. And so that would be Germany in the case of the Roman Empire. And I think he mentioned, there's a few more. And then he compares them, and it's like, why is this? And he describes the dynamic processes that are at work in the evolution of social systems that create the next great thing. And it's like, I think this is very interesting work. I figure you'll be interested in that one. Peter Turchin, Turchin. I'll put a link in there or something. There's a couple books that I've read, and I'm interested in his work, and I'm kind of like, I kind of find a guy like that that's doing something that's very creative and like innovative and illuminating, right? And just see what he's doing, because it's like, wow, that guy's doing something interesting. I better kind of find out what he's up to, right? And kind of pursue it like that. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's one avenue that I found. And another avenue that I found that is totally fascinating to me that I think you will also appreciate. I just spoke with a gentleman, James, I forget his last name right off the top of my head. And I should know it. I apologize. Just spoke with him. He tells me he's this, okay? He's like, he's a PhD student in ecological psychology. And I'm like, those two things really don't mesh in my head. They're talking about two kinds of gears that don't seem to do this, right? And I'm like, well, it turns out he's studying what I am interested in for 33 years and 34 years now, which is it's information transduction in systems.
Hmm.
Okay, and he talked about it like this, like the connection goes like this. My studies of the human body when I was a massage therapist was interested in the tensegrity structure of the human body as a storage system for emotional information. Okay.
Hmm.
And so it's like this. It's like so inertia of it's like constitutional, which is inertia of the physical form, like posture, and its relation to emotionality. So like when you look at someone, you can tell, are they depressed? Are they full of themselves? Are they, you get me?
Hmm.
And it's like, so that's, I was surprised by that, but we connected well. And it's like, that might be a field of interest to you based upon my impression of your work, which is related to just, you're like, you're far out, man. You're like, okay, I'm checking out things of a wide variety of, and what's interesting, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, my current research has to do with ideas and how ideas take hold in us.
Who's us? Like
Hum-
individuals or groups?
it would be individuals and groups.
Sure.
So, the fractal nature of that. Like, okay, what
Oh,
works? What
that's what
works
he
for?
said. That's the magic word right there. Fractals and like multi. He said multi fractals, and I'm like still trying to wrap my brain around that one. But
Oh,
you're
interesting.
100% on the track, and it's like this idea is like it's like thought forms, right? And they're
Hmm.
embedded inside the physical structure somehow, or related to the physical structure. And like, yeah, you're absolutely. That's why I mentioned it to you because I'm like, this is right up your alley, man. Like evolution, no, ecological psychology. I'm writing it down.
I've been looking into that definitely because of just how, especially with history,
Yes, sir.
if we understand the context, it helps us to understand the history a lot with much more nuance and why people did the things that they did. And ideas are the starting point of that. You have to know what major ideas the thinkers of the time were playing with. And
Hmm.
if you can put that into context of the history, you get a much better understanding of why something might happen, or their sort of predictiveness of that. I
That's
mean, you think
interesting.
about today, right? Nobody in other times would be able to understand what's happening right now, where we're kind of at each other's throats and going crazy because of being able to communicate with one another instantaneously
Oh
through
yeah.
things like Twitter and.
Oh yeah. The communication system is like, okay, that's just so different, right? Like,
Mhm.
wow. And it's like, I guess yeah, the no question it is. So I'm it's Ian, excuse me, James. I'm really trying hard here, and it's like James Connors is the name of the gentleman who's the ecological psychologist.
Oh, James
Okay, now
Connors.
I spoke with him, and the conversation kind of goes to this: is I'm interested in generating what I call a conversational tools to allow us to talk about entities and their capacity to for information. Um, what's the right word here? Hmm, getting a skip. It's the transmission of information into and out of semi-stable systems, right?
Hmm.
Information transduction is the word I'm looking for. And it's like, but I want it to be scalable so that we can have one conversation that talks about subatomic things, and the same conversation can talk about intergalactic and stellar, proportions. So it's scalable between systems.
Hmm.
And it's like, okay, because that's the model that we're starting from. And so I'm looking forward to beginning that conversation because I'm like, the issue is this. So when you talk about in individuals and groups, right? That conversation is the same tool should be useful in that both situations.
Hmm. Right.
because how does the information travel? That's all that matters, right?
Hmm.
Some things impair the flow of information, some things accelerate the flow of information. And it's like, okay, what does that mean, right? And how do
Okay.
we talk about those things? And it's like, okay, I don't know, but we need to, I think, hammer out a conversational facility so that we can make meaning easily apparent between these scales, because it is the social scales, large social scales, tiny social scales, even I guess animals and rocks, however
Yeah.
silly that sounds.
Hmm. Interesting. Okay. I've heard of something like that, and that's it's so interesting because it would be it's also one of those things, with teaching, that you have to think about knowledge transfer and how that works. And it seems that humanity is at the point where we need a universal language because we are constantly misunderstanding one another because of the many different languages that we speak, because most people only speak one to two,
Right.
and then it makes it easy to just misunderstand someone right off the bat because of cultural differences. Like, one language can have a word that means one thing, and another language is, oh, this is a completely offensive one. You could think about, like, black, Spanish for black, right? It you know we have this, like, thing where, there's a massive miscommunication that can happen there. And so it seems to me that we should be talking about this. What kind of language would allow us to talk about these things at scale, and also to stop the, like, just, I don't know, like sheer miscommunication that happens on top of what is already happening in culture right now, which is people are trying to change the meaning of language
Oh
itself.
my, I
And so
agree
then we're
with you.
super confused on top of that layer of things.
Wait,
So,
wait. And it's like, this is presuming good intentions in communication, which is
right.
to say, no, there are people that are intentionally fogging up the air just for purposes of confusion of people for whatever purposes that you and me might not understand and probably would disagree with,
Right. And it's taking advantage of people because the language sounds like something that's good, but is really doing something that's completely negative to, everybody in the group, basically.
Right. So that's what I'm working with. I'm trying to having some conversations with Kurt Doolittle, he's a fairly controversial figure, in my estimation, and for good reasons. He says things that are easily interpreted in a manner that is offensive. Okay,
Hmm.
and it's like, and okay, I don't condone anything that he particularly says, but I'm trying to understand how he processes the information, because it's like he's coming up with a way to quantify information to allow us to compare intersubjective differences in a calculable way. Because it's like, well, it's like people will make claims, it's like every group is better than the other group by all their own standards. And it's like, well, how do we like decide? We have to decide between these alternative competing value structures, right? And
Yeah.
it's like, well, that's important to be able to have a conversation that kind of stands aside and looks at competing value structures and is able to evaluate them and then adjudicate between controversies between them, I guess.
Right. And just be able to see how often this person is being, you know, honest, or is actually trying to join the conversation versus, you know,
Right.
obfuscating it, or
Oh, it's like this. It's like and I think the conversations we're referring to, in a rather oblique fashion, for the purposes of self-defense, maybe even, right? Is like this. Is like the the conversations we're referring to are not interested in actual conversation,
hmm.
and those individuals are interested in squelching opposing viewpoints for the purpose of dominating the conversational space without competition, because they can't stand the competition. So they use hook and tricks and bullying behavior to control the conversational space and cause the participants in the conversation to internally censor. So you don't
Right.
really need police. If I can cause you to not commit a thought crime, at least vocally, then I don't need police for you because you're safe. You're like, you've already got it. You're covering the base for me, right?
Right.
And it's
Yep.
awful, isn't it? It's like, I really find it awful.
Well, it's a conversation that needs to be talked about right now. It seems that this last year has been a whole exercise in seeing if people actually are it's what we're not liberal or Democrat anymore, or Democrat or Republican anymore. We're authoritarian or uh like freedom loving libertarian, like actual liberal, which is like most freedom to the most amount of people possible, or we're the government knows best, you should listen to everything they say, that nothing can be said against them because they are above questioning.
That's
And
right. I regard this as the issue is it goes to the cultural hegemony from Antonia Gramsci again. The cultural preferences of the elite are projected through the social institutions into the masses. Okay, and so it's like the issue is there's two types, and it's a thinker versus an authoritarian, and the authoritarian isn't a thinker but follows the lead of the person in the position in the social institution, because it's a innate trust in an institutional position. The fact that he's in that position means he's trustworthy, and we should listen to what he says because he's an expert and I'm not. And I'm like, you're an authoritarian and you're kind of dangerous, I think, but that's just my opinion and I don't agree. Right?
yeah.
So it's dissent in the age of squelching the opposition is like, oh, it's a bad thing. Ask Solzhenitsyn, right?
Oh yeah. Well, that's the book that if you actually read it, you will never believe in communism again. But
Huh? What does
in
that
my
mean?
opinion,
What does actually read it mean?
I mean that if you pay attention to his words and see how it can be applied to other situations than just his own, because a lot of people do that. They'll be like, "Oh, this could have only happened in,
Mm,
Russia
mm, mm.
under these circumstances." And it's no, no, no. This can happen in anywhere in the world,
Right.
the right circumstances.
That's right. Yes, and it's interesting because it's like it looks to me like the left is fighting the last war. They think they're fighting 1920s in Germany.
Mm,
And it's like, yeah, you're fighting the last war and you're the problem. That's my opinion. And it's perhaps controversial because it's like you're acting in a manner that is consistent with brown shirts, right? You're doing the things that are consistent with the people that you think you're fighting.
right. Well, most people should see that when uh, we live in like the United States and Canada and other nations that are supposedly free, and you see videos of police going in and shutting down churches because they have chosen to go to that church and to worship there. That is their choice and they can do it. We've been around COVID for a year. Everybody knows that it's going on. If you're going to stop them from doing that, you are now in the authoritarian category, and you cannot deny this. You are
Hmm,
exactly as
hmm,
anybody who would be
hmm.
shutting down, that. And so this is the problem that I see, is that nobody's paying attention. Really, we're just like, oh, it's kind of a thing that's been going on for forever. And it's like, no, no, no. These are the signals right here, shutting down people from doing something. The first in the United States, the First Amendment allows for this. It's the very first one, and you're saying they can't do that. It's for their own safety, of course. It's like that's the line of every
Yeah,
dictator. It's for your own good. It's
right.
for your own good.
Hmm, hmm. What's interesting is like it's like the statement that it's undeniable. It's like, of course it's deniable, man. It's like don't underestimate the capacity for self-deception, right?
Hmm.
It's like, and it's like to me, it's cognitive dissonance at work, right?
Yeah.
So there's interfering signals they're incompatible signals, and it's like, watch that duck shake that water off, and that incompatible signal is not noticed as long as possible, refusing to alter the paradigm of perception because it's like it's inconvenient. It will cause me to be disturbed because it's like, how do I maintain my position and be relatively comfortable despite the fact that I'm holding two logically inconsistent thoughts in my head at the same time? I don't like to hear them banging together because it makes so much clamor, right?
Mhm.
It's like, so I kind of ignored the one. I turned down the volume on that one. I'm getting ready to have a chat with my neighbor he went to medical school with me. He lives across the street, randomly moved there. Like we went to med school like 1,000 miles from here, and he randomly bought the house across the street. And I sat next to him in medical school for 2 years, and we argued politics, and we never did resolve it. And it's still, we haven't changed our positions. And it's like this. I have to ask him this question because we're brushing on this, and I said, I don't think you take me seriously. Yesterday, I was on Saturday, and so 2 days ago. So the question this week is going to be, okay, since I always get it wrong from your perspective, you must have a model in your head for why I get it wrong. I want to know what that model tells you. How is it possible that I can always be wrong, consistently wrong for 22 years, 24 years? It's 24 years. And it's like, I'm confident there's a model in your head, and you're like, what does it mean? What do you think is going on between my ears that is causing me to always get the wrong answer from your perspective? Does that make sense? Is that logically reasonable?
It's one of those things. I only have a few friends that I can actually talk to about politics without things going off the rails, because most people can't handle civil conversations anymore, I feel like. But it is interesting to have conversations like that and wonder and see, just kind of what's ticking. It like this is what changed my opinion back when I was in college. I used to be a raging liberal, and of course, I thought, I was right in everything. But as soon as I actually went into the arguments and thought about a mindset, this is part of history, right? Is like, okay, what mindset does the person have to have, and like, how would the person be living to have this sort of idea in their head, right? Why would they do that? And so I I sort of lived it. I kind of like, I tried to embody all of these ideals that I didn't have.
That's crazy, man. I like that.
And
It's like the method acting system of history, right?
right.
That's
and
cool.
and that led me to the epiphany that I can't believe in either side, because they're models of the world that are going to be, conflicting. And my worldview is that nothing has to be conflicting if we can accept it as part of the sphere of, like, just things that happen around us, instead of, something that we feel so morally opposed to, unless of course it's something that, literally goes against God and everything holy, of murder and, other such things that should never be accepted in society.
Hmm.
But, those things, it's like, to keep everybody together, we have to have opposing opinions, right? To the whole concept of utopia, when it originally was brought about, was an absurdity, and it was laughed at, and people laughed at it because it was absurd that everybody would, live perfectly in a perfect world and think the same thing together.
Right. Utopia, I think, means we're never going to be.
Right,
Right.
exactly. And now it's something like a model for certain people of, we should build this
We
with.
no. There was Beck. Glenn Beck had a conversation with a socialist guy, and he's like this. Okay, so he's asked this question, which was fascinating. He says, "If I could prove to you, as a matter of fact, that socialism cannot work, would we still try it? Well, we have to try." And it's like, son of a bitch, you're totally not rational, and you just admitted it. And it's like, and you're not even ashamed. It's shame on you for being not ashamed.
Well, those are the kind of people that hopefully our system should weed out from having power, but frequently do not.
Hi. No, I know. It's like this is our system. It's like this is. I think you're too generous with our system. And it's like. So you know what's his name? Yuri Bezmenov. Are you familiar with him? So
Yeah.
Yuri Bezmenov said it well. He goes, look, so you go in any society, say it's Brownian motion, all kind of things happening, right? He goes, if you have any particular vector that you want to accentuate, you find someone that's doing it, right? And you give him resources. You give him more resources as long as he's doing the right vector. And it's like you find ones that spin off and do the vector you want. And this, so if you have access to resources and can manipulate resources, you can generate social currents that are outsized based upon your influence, which is based upon your access to resources. So it's like this. It's like so it's like it's not an even sum game. It's not like a even Steven thing. It's not like this competing narratives or something like that. It's not even. Don't pretend it is, because it's idealistic foolishness to suggest that no, the powerful players are influencing events all the time. It's like giant magnets on a field of iron filings, and it's not all equal. It's based on the preferences of the people who have the resources, and it always has been, and it always will be. And so it's like that's what I would call like social realism or something like that, right?
I'm not sure what term I would use, but it's
probably.
probably.
I'm all ears, because I would like to hear what term you would use, because I just made that up off the top of my head, right?
Yeah, that's the hard one though. That's the one that I'm not sure a lot of people are amenable to waking up to. That's the case. That there are these magnets out there that
No.
point everything in one direction,
Bias.
and you can fight against it, but
no. So the issue is, it looks to me like this. It's like when we look at it from a like a human point of view, like boots on the ground in the dust, right? That's like what a human mortal witness will see, right? It looks like the prevailing powers that be, which is these influencers with unreasonable access to resources, are seeking to cause the people to adopt an attitude that is go along to get along. Don't buck the trend. Just line up with the other sheep and move along, and your life will be easier. And it's like, so a guy like me, I'm sort of rebellious, and I'll go out in the woods by myself. I'd rather not go along and get along, because I'm not that friendly, and I'm not that, you know what, I'm not interested in being that agreeable with you, because if I don't see it as right, I'm going to buck you, and I'm like, oh, I'm probably going to pay extra. So this reminds me. So I'm reading this War and Peace and War by Peter Turchin, and he's bringing this social psychology into this. And he's like, okay, there's an experiment by the psychologist, which they give everybody $10, and they're giving everybody $10. The psychologist creates rules by which how you bet your $10, and then who gets the money, right? And it fractionates the group into roughly 3 categories, which is quite interesting. So 25% of the population falls into the category called saints. Okay, and the saints, like my neighbor that sat next to me in medical school, who I'm trying to create a podcast with, because it's very amusing, right? And now we're working on that, but I got to work him over. He'll get there. And it goes like this. He's a saint. And it's like this. The saints will do the thing that if everybody behaves like the saint, everybody gets ahead. Okay? 25% of the population. And now 25% of the population also fractionates into the category called knaves. And the knaves' job is to rob the saints, because the saints are predictably naive, and they just take stuff from the saints and everybody else if they can do it. Okay? That leaves 50% in the middle. And I associate it with the 50% in the middle, which I refer to these people as the moral punishers. Okay? And the moral punishers are like this. Given the opportunity, if the experimenter allows it, the moral punisher will pay money to punish the knave, because the knave needs to be punished. And if he is allowed to punish the knave, everybody gets ahead, including the knave. And the knave just doesn't get as far ahead as if he can rip off everybody. But it's like, but the knave gets ahead and he knuckles under because he knows he's going to get punished. So they did MRI studies on the moral punishers, and they showed their pleasure center is activated when they punish the knave. It's like they enjoy it and will pay for the privilege of doing it. And it's like, what occurs to me as occurred in our civilization is that the knaves have convinced the saints that the moral punishers are the problem. So we suppress the moral punishers, so the knaves get to rob everybody, and the saints get to feel sanctified. And the moral punishers don't get to do anything. We just get to get punished. Just like this moral situation is just untenable.
Yeah, it's weird. I think it's part of that is also the language games that are being played currently.
Oh my.
In that the knaves got too smart for themselves and learned how to manipulate language to make the saints think that they're being saintly when they're
Right.
really.
So it's a form of lying, right? This is what Kurt Doolittle likes to talk about. It's all like he calls it industrial scale lying, right? Generation of falsehoods, misleading people and causing them. And I'm really impressed. There was some 20-year-old guy, and I figure he's 20. He might not be 20. He's on YouTube, and it's like, you got to look this up because it's funny. It's like he created a new gender category for himself. Okay.
Oh, I think I heard about that.
The super straights. Mm-hmm. And it's like, yeah. So the super straights is a new gender category, and it's like he's using the language of the left. I just call it left because they're bending words and doing crazy things with words, and it's like dissolving categorization, and he's just reinstituting categorization using their terminology. I'm like, but that was quite brilliant.
No, it was a brilliant way of just tearing down the whole thing itself, because if you're opposed to it, then you're opposed to the other ones. And yeah, that was pretty clever. It was pretty clever word games there.
So that's what it's like this on this side of the divide, right? It looks like that the creativity of the people in regards to responding to this outrages that have occurred in the last 20 years, kind of when we weren't really paying attention because it's like so ridiculous. The logic isn't there. And it's like, now we're like, whoa, this is all too serious. And now it's like, okay, there was somebody who was responding to that guy, and it's like, you're making a mockery of our thing. And it's like, you got it. You are self-mocking. And it is funny, man. I was like, very impressive, but it's like it's internal inconsistencies tying themselves up in knots and throwing themselves out the window.
Which is, I think, how it's fixed, right? Is that the absurdities are mocked, and once everybody understands that they deserve that sort of ridicule, then they sort of awaken to the lie that's been happening in front of them.
That was the word I would use, ridicule. So it is it's like, oh, the emperor, no clothes, right? It's all done, and it's like, wow, a million years ago, you never really thought that'd be a useful analogy, right? Like that story has legs.
I think those things need to be included in new stories or new categories to really spark the imagination of certain people sometimes. So it's one of those things in memes. It's like, if you can iterate enough with enough times, then it really starts sticking in people's heads.
Right. So it's like this. I do this thing like, so I'm dealing with my patients, right? And so it's like, look, smokers, the doctor's supposed to get them to not smoke, right? I'm like, okay. So it kind of like gets to be this ridiculous game because I've been doing this for a while now. And it's like, okay, they'll tell the smoker smoking's not good for you, and they're like, yeah, oh, like who? Oh, that's the first time I heard that. It's going to change my behavior, right? It's like, so like just going through iterations of that, like, okay, and it's like, I call this the horse water problem. Okay, you see, you get like that makes you laugh, and I like that because it's like this. You get what I'm referring to. It's kind of oblique, and it makes you think a little bit, right? Like, what the hell, horse water, horse water. So it turns it into two words, and you understand exactly what I mean, right?
Hmm.
So fish water problem is entirely different, right?
Mm.
Does that make sense? So you're like this. So you get up with these binaries that are like, it tells you a story, right? So
Right.
emperor clothes.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
The
like it, man,
little.
because it's like truncate that thing down to, because everybody needs to know the basics. You tell the basic little aphorisms or whatever you want to call them, and then that will be like a history class. I would like to see that class.
Oh.
Okay, which is like this. So your job is to plug all these aphorisms up and make them turn it into two words, right? And then apply it to various situations, right? And it's a class. It's just like, it's
Yeah.
just a mental exercise, because it's like, you're smart, you can do it. It's just a game, right? It's like a little tag it with that two words that people will know what it means, right? And
Hmm.
I think that, like, when we look at teaching and education, one of the great losses of our civilization has been the deracination of the public from the Bible, because it's all the stories. These stories have been passed down for like who knows how many generations, right? And it's
Hmm.
like this. So it's like that story has some import to this situation, just like horse water does, right?
Right.
And it's like, so, but when you make it so the public is not aware of the story, now the generation before has been deracinated. You're alienated, right? And so
Well,
you
I think
you go ahead.
I think the good way of doing that, instead of it just being the Bible or something like that,
Right.
you have a class on like world religions, and you have to read every single book
I like it.
of all of them, and then understand the metaphors within each one. And that would be super important to everyone. Just being
That would be
able
a
to
good
see them.
project. It's a good
Yeah.
project right there. Just design it. Like I have a teacher who's a English English teacher in high school, I think. And I like gave her this class. So I'm working on this book, and this book is right here. It's in this book right here. This is MAH, Alchemical History. Okay. And it's like this. So it's like the premise of this, and I created it for her because I was going to write the book, but I'm like, I'm too lazy to write the book or something. Maybe I don't know quite what it is. And I'm like, I turned it into a um, class exercise. Okay, I'm going to give you the structure of how to perform the exercise, and it's up to you how you do it, because it's artistic, and it's research, and then it's analysis in a way, right? So it's like mytho-alchemical history works like this: you pick all the basic elements and when they were discovered, okay, and you write down this timeline of when they were discovered, okay. Then you find the alchemical symbol for that letter. And then you find what the symbol represents in its variety of things, which is way more than that element. Does that make sense?
Hmm.
And then
Yeah.
then you attach it to the timeline of what was happening socially in the civilization at the time, right? And what the significance did it bring, right? And it's the purpose of it is to inspire people to like this. You can't get it wrong because it's artistic in its nature, right? But it causes you to research and do things that are interesting to you. And it's like, to me, the most important function of a human being is a curiosity, right?
Yeah.
Because what
Exactly.
makes you want to get some information, right? Like to reach out and to seek to gather it and then turn it into something, make something out of it. That's the fire we want to feed in the educational process. I think you will agree.
Oh, completely.
Which is like
That's
unpredictable though, isn't it?
Oh, it's so hard to find something that's consistently like addictive across all spectrums of learners. That's the interesting one. That's why what I'm actually working on. What right now is my other thing is making education more like play. So exploration instead of memorization.
Right.
Uh,
Right.
because
That's
you
why people
remember
hate history.
things, right? You remember things so much better when you're more interested in it, when it's fun to do, when it's a, an exploration of the time period rather than, okay, this time we have
Right.
terms, go find them in the history book
And the
and then
name
tell me
and the
why they're
date.
important and the
Oh
date.
God,
Yeah.
help me know. It's awful. It's
See,
awful.
that's what I mean, right? You're already bored. Everybody's turned off the podcast.
Power down. You in the back, pay attention.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, man. So
Uh,
so to me, the purpose of it is, and I make art, right? I'll show you some of my art because it's kind of amusing. It's kind of goofy because it's related to alchemical symbols, and it's like because it's discovery process, and then it's like draw it. You know what I mean? And
mhm.
it's like, what does that mean? I'll show you this one. This one I just recently made, not too long ago. I'm walking over there. I'm still in the room. This one here, it's just some silliness, right? Okay. Okay.
Oh,
So here we have four
yeah, fire.
alchemical symbols. So this symbol is earth.
Yep.
That one is water. That one is air. It's hard for me to do this. It's all backwards to me. And that one is fire. Okay.
Mhm.
And so it those combine into that symbol, which is the synthesis of all four elements.
Hmm.
And it's
Right.
like this. So what's that mean? Any two of these elements will combine to that element as well. That's kind of interesting to me. And I don't know what it means. And I don't really care what it means, to be honest. It's just entertainment, infotainment, right? That's what this canvas is. It's infotainment for me, right?
Hmm.
And so I'm
Yeah.
like, and it's like, what's the significance of it? Well, it has no great significance, right? It's
Mhm.
interesting to me for the moment, and it inspires me to do something and act in the world, and that is a little bit interesting, right?
Right.
And it causes unfolding of this to seek further things of a similar nature, perhaps, or dissimilar nature.
Right. Unless I am incorrect, your alchemical symbol of water and earth were switched.
The alchemical symbol of water is a downward facing triangle with blue at the base, like a line through it.
Is it? Okay, I guess I learned it differently.
It's
I
okay.
thought that
I don't.
it opposes the fire is what I thought. So it's the water is the yonic
Quenching.
fire.
Well, you can draw it on any side you want. I just drew it where I drew it, right?
Okay. Well, yeah. No. Okay.
No, and it's like I know the purpose of it was to show that those symbols combined to that symbol in the center, that Star of David, right?
Okay.
That was all it was, and that's why I opposed them the way I did. So earth and water
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
air were opposed for that reason because they like combine like. Anyway, it's like I say, any two of them should be able to make the entire. No, not any two of them. That's interesting. I haven't done the analysis that much. And it's like the Chinese have this crazy system, which is the five element system, which is,
Oh, right. With metal.
it
Yep.
has metal in it, right? But it does weird things. And it's like, okay, that one too difficult to do on a canvas, man. I think it has to be a three-dimensional structure to do that one.
Well, they do
That-
that, and then they do the 12 cycles, right, of the different animals. So.
that's right. That's right. 12 animals. And I don't know about how the 12 animals combine together. I haven't studied that part. I have studied the 12 animals as a physical movement in the
I
training.
know what year it is this year. This year is the metal ox, but other than that, I don't know a whole lot about
Oh,
it.
see, there you go. I didn't know that. That's pretty good. And it's like, so to me, it's like we have to, so we're back again. We're talking about like symbol systems and representation of information, which is kind of an interesting thing because it's like any human expression of information is just like a facsimile, right? It's a representation. It's not the information, right? It's a art, artistic or artificial, right? generated symbol that is designed to represent something and it cannot be properly done. It cannot be completely done because it is not the thing that we're trying to represent. It's merely a
Right.
symbol.
Well, it's like pictographics, right? We went
Right.
the Egyptians started with it, and the Greeks were like, "Nah, let's do language," and then we're back to pictographics. Yeah.
So I'll tell you this This is crazy. Come, you're getting me all fired up, man. Stop it. Stop it. It goes like this. So, okay. So I'm doing this alchemy and I'm studying the Hebrew. Okay. Okay. Now I got to find my Sharpie because that's how you write on these cards that you can see on the Zoom. Okay. 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 So there's a symbol for fire, right? So a delta, right? Like we use that in chemistry and physics, right? A delta.
Yeah, in military,
Yeah.
it's the phallic symbol, right?
Yeah, that's right. We're doing something. Okay. Now this symbol, the delta with the little plus sign, has two. In alchemy, it means the soul, and it also means sulfur. Okay. Okay. Now,
yeah, because that's
what happens when we apply fire to the soul or fire to sulfur? What's that symbol? What's that make? Right. So I just did this. So I added fire to the symbol for sulfur in the soul. Right. You with me?
right.
To me, that sounds like hell. Okay. You burn the soul, too much fire. Right.
Right.
Okay. It doesn't have to be, right? We could be just firing you up a little bit because you're too cold. You know what I mean? Like warming you up. But if we're going to overfire you, right?
Get you interested in something.
Right. And it's like, okay, now the Hebrew, this is just fascinating to me. Okay. I'm writing the Hebrew. Okay. That line right there on the bottom is the Hebrew.
Okay.
Okay. Now it's read like this. It's read from here to here. From
right in reverse.
Right to left. Correct. That word is pronounced like this. Means as fire. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So how are we going to apply fire to the soul, right? Here's the Hebrew word for it, and it's pronounced at the bottom there. How about that for some craziness, right? And it's like, what's the value of this card, right? It's contains some information, but it's kind of like loose wires connected, right? But it's inspirational because it causes you to think about things and make connections in your experience and in your your understanding about how things operate, and maybe you make connections that you didn't have before. And that's what I think the value of this kind of work is. This alchemy, I call mytho-alchemical history, or whatever you want to call it, because it's like it doesn't matter what you come up with, because it's all artistic. Right? Your interpretation of what you find is artistic. And it's like, and the cool thing about art, so I started painting maybe a year ago or something. And I'm like, I'm not trying to be a great painter, but I just do it because it's entertaining for me. And it allows me to express myself. And it's crazy in it can't be done wrong. Mm-hmm. When you express yourself, it can't be done wrong. It's just, you could probably do it better, right? Or something that will please you more, or more efficiently, or something like that. But it's like, it's not wrong, like per se. It's not like, I should have put B instead of C because C is wrong, right? And now it wasn't 1872 like the professor says it should be, and now I got a D.
Right. Yeah, that's, I think, one of those things with learning is that there needs to be more opportunities for exploration in a way that encourages you to explore, and that there isn't a right answer for things. You're not wrong. It's not
That's
between
right.
right and wrong.
That's right.
You're
I like that.
discovering information, and you're discovering new things, because it seems that that's one of those big aspects of learning that holds a lot of people back, is the fear of failure.
Well, it's like fear of looking the fool in front of my little peers.
Right, and in front of the peers too. Yeah,
And it's like
both those. And
what I think would be cool from as an educator would be like, okay, we're going to make a system. So like I like this alchemical history model because it's like, okay, work with whoever you want to work with on whatever you want to work with, however you want to work with it, right? You might need a drawer to draw some things. You might need someone to look up some things and plug it all in. And you guys just make something, and you don't have to work together. You can work separate if you want, and just do whatever you want. And we'll compare notes here in about 2 hours or whatever you want. You know what I mean? And see what comes out of it, right? And like, so I'm doing CrossFit. So this is a weird effort, which is it's information transduction, the same thing, but it's not on a verbal level. Okay. So the coach is like this, man. The coach is, I hang out with this guy, 71, right? And he's like, okay. And I've been working on my back for 34 years. Okay. And he tells me this, he's like, he tells me things that are the opposite of what I've been telling myself for 34 years. And I've been working on my back trying to fix it. He's like, okay, ignore the signals coming from your body. I'm like, that sounds so wrong. That's just wrong. And I'm like, I'll do it because I just do it. Right. And he's like, I said, that's not quite the correct, my interpretation of what he has said. And his interpretation may differ. Right. But my interpretation works for me, which is like this. It's not the signals coming from my body that are to be ignored. It is my interpretation of those signals which is to be ignored because it's clearly wrong. Because it's like this, the interpretation. So you're doing too many of the thing, and it's making your heart go too fast, and you can't get your breath, and you're getting tired, and you need to do more. And it's like, the interpretation is, Jesus, stop. This is annoying. We need to stop doing this because someone's going to get hurt, and it's probably you, right? And it's like, that interpretation is false. We can keep going, and we can learn how to work in this aggravating, agonizing situation, right? And you will become stronger and more fit and more capable if you do it, if you keep on demanding. And I'm like, so it's the interpretation. And my nephew gave me a book by his law school dean on Stoicism, of all things. And the Stoics are like the same thing. It's not the thing that's the problem. It's our opinions that are the problem. Right? And there was a Seneca, the Roman, said this. He said, death has a bad reputation. Those who speak ill of it haven't tried it yet, however. Right? And it's like, but he's right. Right. So it's like the trick is not to get too their game is not to get too attached to things that you have no capacity to influence. Right. And it's like I see a lot of people and they're anxious about stuff. And it's like, that's outside their scope. That's not your job to be worried about that, because your worrying doesn't do one thing about it. Because if thinking would fix it, it wouldn't be a problem. Right. Because you've been thinking about it.
Right. Unless you're actually creating an action that either helps to fix it now or sometime in the future, then there's no point. Yeah. No.
So it's like that. It's interesting. So when you're like talking about educating people, it's like educating people how to use their mind, right?
Well,
and
not just the mind, but how the mind is connected to also the body,
yeah.
And then the spark, which is the interest in it. Yeah.
Right. So that will be the soul in that image that I gave you there before.
Yeah.
And it's like, because it is the spark, it is the thing that motivates the animal to do the thing, right? And it's okay. And it's like artistic. So no, there's not a wrong answer. There's more. You could probably do it better if you practice a little bit more, though, right?
Right. But that's the big thing. That's the big lesson that I wish education found a way to do it right, which is the growth mindset, the person who understands that failure isn't the end, but the beginning of the next iteration. So
that's right.
The next way to become better is like, okay, we learn about that in history in other ways. It's like Edison, or
oh my God, money machine
light bulb.
And it's like, okay, another error. Good, that one's off the list. Right. Oh my God, what a thing, man. Okay.
But that's the thing, right? We need to teach people that there were people in the past who did things like hundreds of times before they got it right, and that's okay. It's okay to do, as long as you're trying to find the right answer, instead of, I think a
Right.
lot of times nowadays, where you being right is more important
Then the
than finding,
process.
well, even finding the truth, right?
Oh
It's
God, don't say such things to me. It's like so upsetting. Oh my God.
that, well,
I'm
that's my problem with a lot of academia right now, is that we don't care about actually finding the truth, or finding the like a more correct picture of what's going on. It's, you got to be right, so we're going to change the data to make it look like we're
oh my.
fine.
Okay, I like that, man. So yeah, this is the right conversation though. This is exactly right because it's how because we have it's decidability is what Kurt Doolittle would call it. It's like
Mm,
how do we decide, right? How do we decide between competing options? And it's like so that's the trick is how do we create measurement tools that are useful in this context of very kind of squishy margins, right?
mhm.
That's the key, and I think we can do it. And it's like it's just a matter of do we apply ourselves in that process for that purpose. If we do, then we'll be successful because it's like anything you practice, you're going to get better at. And it's like so it's like that. So it's just I always like this. It's like the trick in life is not so much that you're not gonna you don't want to get knocked down, right? But it's not you're going to get knocked down, man. You're going to get knocked down, and the trick is pick your ass up, dust off again, and start down the road some more because you're going to fall down again because you will, right? And you're doing the best you can, and it's not pretty. And it's like they say, watching sausage being made or something like that. It's not pretty, and it's like okay, it's just rough, and it's like in the end, if you have enough stick to itness and you're properly intentioned, you're going to achieve goals that will make people look like it was easy in 30 years. They'll say, "Oh, it's just easy for you because look, you know what I mean." It's like, yeah, it was so easy for me, right?
Mhm.
Right,
Yeah.
and but it is. It's like, okay, you're going to get knocked down, and it's okay. And I like that. I like this the model of you just make stuff, and that's why the art thing is cool. So art therapy or like turn history into some kind of art thing, man. Right? Because it is. You can't get it wrong. It's going to be all right. You might have should have included something about the whatever it is, right? How come you didn't include that thing right there, right? That's the question for the history teacher trying to teach history through the artistic medium, right?
Mhm.
How come you didn't put that in there? That's kind of curious to me. I thought it was important. I don't understand how you missed it, right? Like, what do you
Well,
think about it?
that's the interesting thing with history, is a lot. I don't know. The more present era, people seem to think that people in the past were wrong, and that we should morally
Oh
judge them as
my,
being wrong. And
oh my.
it
This is a
seems that
religion.
that's the worst take of religion, or not religion, of history that you can get, because it just means that you didn't listen to anybody that was trying to teach you history, or that you had the worst teachers in the world, because that's not what history is about. We can't change the past. We can only change the way that we act now in the present, because we are the people of now and not the people of the past. And
Right,
so
right. We're in agreement. And it is. He who controls the present controls the past. He who controls the past controls the future.
Mhm.
Right. And it's like, see, you're like, I think there's an assessment here. There's a secret assumption in your mind that all things are equal. And no, there are interested parties that are seeking to control it all for such purposes to control the future by intent. And their intent, it occurs to me, their intent upon demoralization of the youth, okay, for the purpose of alienating them from their elders
Mhm.
so that they can be properly deracinated from their traditions and more malleable in the future.
Yeah, which is, you know,
Evil is a word I would use.
basically how Marxism works.
It's pretty much just like, but there's a what's his name? Oh shoot, he has a crazy name. Mold bug.
Oh yeah. Curtis,
Okay,
yeah.
Mencius mold bug.
Mhm.
Right? Yeah, Kurt Yarvin, and he's good. And he mentioned a thing that was quite interesting. It was like, and I wish I think I've displaced it by having to come up with his name, which was very difficult for me apparently. Now because we were talking about this, the control of the past. I read an article that was about Leninism 2.0, 3.0, or bio-Leninism,
Hmm.
which is quite an interesting function. So it's like sociologically, Leninism works like this, and I'm old, man, and I've been studying stuff for a long time. I studied Soviet history, and I studied um, Tsarist history too. And it's like in college, and it was like this, but I did not understand Leninism. Leninism works like this. We take the dregs of society who cannot make it on their own. They are outcasts. They're like marginalized groups. We elevate them in social status by party power. The party elevates them to a position that is of social influence that is beyond what they could possibly ever recognize from their own efforts. Okay? And so they know they have been elevated beyond beyond reason. Okay? And so they're party loyalists, because with party solidarity, you can maintain your social position and influence, which you would never obtain by yourself. And so if you're disobedient, then you will be cast back into the pit from which you were drawn. Okay? Now, someone who has potentials to stand on their own 2 feet and gain social status by their efforts is of no use to the party, because that person can never be loyal enough, because he can leave, right? So that's Leninism and how it works. And it's like, it took me till maybe this year to figure out, within the last 12 months, I'll say. How about that? It was not in 2021, but it was within the last 12 months. I was like, wow, that's how it works. And so it's like, it is artificially generating social influence for people by party power. And they're supported by corporate sponsorship.
Mm-hmm. Right.
With intention, which is what the ultimate irony of it is. They think themselves falsely to believe. No, they falsely believe themselves to be fighting the man, right? Like to overturn the power, revolutionary for the people against the man, and in fact they work for the man,
Mm-hmm.
which is I would say they work for the knave against the moral punishers.
Yeah, well,
Nothing new under the sun, man. That's an old Babylonian game, right?
see, but then it brings us back to the problem that we've been having across the spectrum, right? Which is, how do we give the people who are like socially undesirable enough status so that they're happy with their life, or they feel that they're included within the society, and so that they don't feel the need to then go out and start punishing and, you
Oh,
know, playing
oh,
the
oh.
dictator.
I think that the purpose of the society is designed to create them, to punish them enough so that they have this animosity. So its alienation is the desired output of the elites in the first place.
Hmm. Interesting.
Right? Because it's like, look, people who are essentially happy people are not revolutionary. Revolutionaries have fire in their belly and will do stuff. And it's like, they're useful. So it's like the spark in the, you know what I mean? You're like the useful spark. So seeking to burn something down, that's the useful spark to somebody. And so you find the ones that do the things you want them to do, and you augment their behavior by application of your resources as cash.
Right. Yeah, you give them the kindling to.
No, they yeah, that you give them the resources to burn with their little spark, right?
Mm.
And it's like, what a mess. That's an awful thing to end on, man. It's awful. It's like, it's just what a situation. But I'm very excited about your educational efforts here.
Oh
I
yeah,
think I
no,
think
like
I think I want to compare notes with you again, because it's like, I want to work with you on. I'm going to send you an article about the model for the mythical alchemical history lesson in school? Just for your review, because it's like you might find it amusing. I made it for the teacher that is my patient, and I think you will find it interesting. And I'm like, I found it to be more interesting to cause the kids to become curious and engage in the process, more interesting than me writing the book. Does that make sense? Because it's like, I would gain much more of joy out of watching them hammer away at it in whatever way they do and generate whatever they do than me making the thing as good as I could make it. And I don't have time anyway.
Well, that's the interesting thing. To end on interesting note is with creators, like with this podcast and video and things, is that when you start doing stuff with other people and
Yeah.
having them create with you, it always tends to turn into something more amazing than if you'd just done it yourself.
Right. I'm like that. It's like, yeah, I'm interested in that. And like I say, it's like generating impulses that cause people to engage their creativity and their curiosity to create something that will benefit them in the future. That's as good as it possibly can get, as far as I'm concerned, because we're just, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Positive energy.
And
positive energy for the people. And it's like, inspiring the youth is where it's at, because it's like getting them going and on the right track, and keeping them away from harmful influences. That's as good as it gets too. It's all good,
it's
man.
going to be increasingly difficult.
I don't know. I think we're okay, man.
Just we'll see.
Well, yes, sir. We're not holding our breath, and we're keeping our vigilance, right? It's okay.
Yeah, we'll get there, right? I mean, that's the story of human history, is we're like right on the edge of killing all of ourselves, and then we're like, oh, nope, that's the bad.
It is. It's just a fine line, this chaos order thing. It's like, wow, what a tricky line this is, right?
Hey, as long as we all can at least have a conversation with one another, and
that's right.
Not try to hurt
right. We'll keep it civil.
Yeah, exactly.
Very good. Okay, now I want to call you Ian, but I think it's wrong. Ian.
Think of the Ian.
Ian. Ian. Ian.
You could do Ian the lion. This is the.
I'm thinking of you. ION. I like that.
Oh yeah. And what?
That would have helped. That would have helped me if there was a different vowel in there. But I'll get it right. I'm like, I just had to. I knew it was wrong. I was like, my natural inclination. That's the wrong answer, because I did it already once. I got punished a little bit. It's not much, but
hey,
I felt bad.
This is how I get people to remember me.
It works. It works. And it's like, wait, I'm going to give you one more thing. This is kind of entertaining. It's like, okay, I studied the etymology of 3 words. Okay. So consciousness is a word that springs out of about 1620, mid 1600s. So 17th century word, consciousness. And it comes from the 2 words with and knowledge, from ancient times. Okay. So like 100 years before they had, or 200 years before, so 1400s, they had science, which is like science like we understand it, which is from the same word as knowledge. And 200 years before that, so 1400s, they had conscientious, which is from the same 2 words as conscious. So with knowledge. But the difference is, so to 1200s, they were talking about conscientiousness, which is the knowledge of right and wrong. Okay. And then science is devoid of that moral underpinning. And consciousness is also devoid of that moral underpinning. And now our conversation is toward consciousness and away from conscientiousness. And I'm like, I think conscientiousness is a more appropriate way to be basing this process on, what we call how we process information in our heads. You know what I mean? Because what's right and what's wrong. So I changed it. I have this story, okay? Like, why did the chicken cross the road story? Okay, why did the chicken cross the road? Well, my former answer was because it was better on the other side. And we know that because the chicken crossed the road, right? And it's like, that's not correct. That's no longer correct. Now that in the conscientiousness function, which we add the moral dimension back to it, the chicken crossed the road because it was the right thing to do. And we know it because he crossed the road, right? So it's this moral dimension is added into the previously immoral or amoral functionality. So that's how I'm processing information. I'm trying to reintegrate it to a moral perspective, because it's like it's science itself is amoral, right? So you can do things that are damaging to somebody or something, but science doesn't care. It just tells you how to do it better, right? And it's like it is absent the moral dimension. Is the question, is it right or wrong to do that? And that's what we need to reintroduce to get the wheels turning properly socially, because it's like we're in a mess because we're not basing it
Yeah.
what we're doing on what's right, right?
Right. That makes sense, because it does seem like that more and more, that science is becoming a dogma instead of okay, is this actually helping people? Is it improving their lives?
Right.
Hmm.
There you
Well,
go. That's a good note to end on, man. I want to thank you for spending a few minutes with me. I am Kuzma.
yeah. Thank you for having me again. This is our second time. It's always been a pleasure. Thank
That's
you.
right. We'll go some more. I'll catch up to you here. We'll find out what educationally is going on. I'm going to send you an email here in a little bit, and go from there.
All right. Well, it was nice talking with you.
It was a lot of fun. Take care,
Take
Ian.
care.